The curious case of the contumacious clockmaker. My father, bless his stubborn soul, always insisted that the city of Vienna in the year 1848 was a pressure cooker with a charming facade. He'd say this, usually while meticulously polishing a silver teapot. A man so convinced of his own calm that he was practically vibrating with anxiety. He wasn't wrong. Below the waltz-filled ballrooms and the coffee-house intellectualism, a restless energy was gathering. It wasn't just the steam from the espresso machines. It was the slow, simmering discontent of an empire. I, Anton Kessler, was not a revolutionary. I was, by trade and by temperament, an observer, a clockmaker. My father's apprentice, in fact, though my true genius lay not in gears and springs, but in the art of the well-placed stroke. To me, a clock was a universe of predictable perfection, a stark contrast to the human world, which was a baffling, ticking mess. My father, Leopold, however, saw the world as a clock that was about to run down, and he was convinced he was the only one who could wind it back up. This was, as you might imagine, a rather stressful hobby for a man who made his living from exquisite, delicate machinery. Our shop, Kessler & Son, purveyors of precision and time, was nestled on a quiet side street, a pocket of tranquility in the growing urban maelstrom. It was a place of polished wood, the faint metallic scent of oil, and the constant, hypnotic ticking of a dozen different timepieces. Father was a master. His clocks weren't just instruments, they were works of art, miniature architectural wonders of brass and steel. I, on the other hand, was more of a master of the mundane. My specialty was the repair of pocket watches, a task I found perfectly suited to my disposition. It required patience, a steady hand, and no grand, sweeping visions of a new world order. It was a Tuesday in early March, when the trouble truly started, the kind of day where the air itself felt heavy, thick with unspoken possibilities. The bell above our shop door jingled, and in walked not a customer, but a whirlwind of ruffled lace and righteous indignation. She was a woman, perhaps in her early 20s, with a face that was all sharp angles and intelligent eyes. Her hair, a riot of unruly curls the color of dark roast coffee, was escaping a rather severe bun. In her hand, she clutched a gold pocket watch, not a cheap thing, but a finely wrought piece of craftsmanship. Herr Kessler, she demanded, her voice a rapid-fire succession of syllables. My father, currently hunched over a mantel clock, merely grunted in response. I, being the designated conversationalist, stepped forward. Kessler & Son, at your service. How may we assist you? I offered, trying for a tone of professional calm. This, she said, thrusting the watch at me, this blasted thing is a testament to the incompetence of your craft. It has stopped, completely, in the middle of an important moment. I took the watch. It was a beautiful piece, an English make, and felt heavy and well made in my palm. A stopped watch is a solvable problem, mademoiselle. If you'll allow me a moment, she scoffed. I gave it a moment, an hour, a day. It's been a week, and I can assure you, the moment for which I needed it has long since passed. The moment was the precise hour of a meeting with a group of, let's call them, concerned citizens, and because your pathetic excuse for a timepiece failed me, I was late, very late, and they had already voted. My father finally looked up, his brow furrowed. Our watches do not fail, he said, his voice slow and deliberate. They are works of God's own mechanical perfection. Then God has a faulty assembly line. The woman retorted, it's the very timepiece you sold my uncle, the one he gifted to me. He said it would keep perfect time, until the revolution. Well, the revolution is knocking, and this thing is silent as a grave. This was a rather bold thing to say, given the political climate, and my father's head snapped up like a startled bird. Revolution? He hissed, looking around as if the walls had ears. What revolution? We are all loyal subjects of His Majesty, the Emperor Ferdinand I. The woman gave a short, bitter laugh. The Emperor, Herr Kessler, is a man who thinks his own reflection is a long-lost cousin. He is a puppet, and the people are tired of pulling the strings for nothing. The streets are whispering with change. And yet, this watch, a symbol of your so-called precision, has no time for it. She was right about the whispers. The air in Vienna was thick with them. News of uprisings in Paris and Berlin had trickled in, and the city's students and intelligentsia were growing increasingly vocal. My father, however, lived in a world of gears and escapements, a world he believed to be immune to such messy human affairs. I will inspect it, I said, hoping to diffuse the situation. I held the watch to my ear. Nothing, not even the faintest whisper of a tick. It was utterly, profoundly dead. "See," she said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "Not a peep. Not a single tick-tock. It's like it's holding its breath." I opened the back of the watch with a small, specialized tool. The interior is a miniature cityscape of brass and steel, gears and levers all frozen in place. "It is not a simple matter of a broken spring, mademoiselle," I said, peering through my jeweler's loupe. "The mainspring is intact. The balanced wheel is free. It's as if it's been stopped by a force of will." "A force of will?" she scoffed again. "Are you a clockmaker or a mystic?" "I want it fixed, immediately. My name, by the way, is Elara Vogel, and if you cannot fix this watch, I will take my business and my complaints to every coffeehouse in the city. I will tell them that the famed Kessler and Sons clocks are a metaphor for the entire Habsburg Empire, beautifully crafted, but utterly broken. That got my father's attention. A slur on his craftsmanship was an unforgivable offense. He snatched the watch from my hand. His eyes narrowed with a fierce concentration. He held it to the light, turning it over and over. "The balance staff," he murmured, more to himself than to us. It's perfectly in place. The hairspring is not tangled. It is as if it was simply commanded to stop." "I told you," Elara said with a smug smile. "It's a metaphor." My father's face, usually a study in placid calm, was now a portrait of baffled fury. "Metaphorical watches do not exist. There is a mechanical explanation for everything. There must be." He took the watch over to his workbench, his hands, usually so gentle and precise, trembling slightly. I could see the challenge in his eyes. This was no longer just a repair. It was a battle of wills between a master craftsman and a seemingly inexplicable piece of his own creation. It was the human element intruding on his perfect, predictable world, and he didn't like it one bit. I, on the other hand, found myself intrigued. The watch was a mystery, a paradox, and the woman who brought it in was a whirlwind of wit and fire. Elara Vogel, a name to remember. She watched my father work, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. She wasn't just a customer, she was a participant. She had brought a piece of the world's chaos into our quiet, orderly shop, and it was clear she was enjoying the show. As my father's frustration mounted, I found myself drawn not to the intricate workings of the watch, but to the intricate workings of her mind. She was not just complaining, she was making a point, a political point, a philosophical point, a point about the grand, broken clockwork of their society. And for the first time, I felt the flicker of something beyond simple curiosity. Perhaps, I thought, watching her dark eyes sparkle with a kind of revolutionary glee, the predictable perfection of my clocks was not a comfort, but a cage. Perhaps it was time for a little chaos, the unwinding of an empire. The next few days were a blur of frustration and simmering tension. My father, Leopold, became a man possessed. The mysterious pocket watch sat on his workbench like a small, silent sphinx, its lack of movement a personal insult. He tried everything. He cleaned it, oiled it, and recalibrated every tiny gear. He used his loupe until his eye ached, searching for the microscopic flaw that would explain its silence. But there was nothing. The watch, by all mechanical laws, should have been ticking. It simply wasn't. Meanwhile, the world outside our shop began to tick louder and faster. The whispers Elara Vogel had mentioned had grown into a chorus of demands. Students, professors, and working men were gathering in the streets, calling for a constitution, for freedom of the press, and for the resignation of the ancient, ineffectual Chancellor Metternich. It was a carnival of discontent, a grand Viennese opera of protest, complete with impassioned speeches and hastily written pamphlets. The air, once heavy with the smell of coffee and pastries, now carried the sharper tang of wood smoke and radical rhetoric. Elara became a regular visitor to our shop. She would arrive in a huff, her cheeks flushed with the excitement of the streets, her voice still ringing with the debates she'd just left. She would lean against the counter, her gaze fixed on the silent watch, a glint of triumph in her eyes. "And isn't that what we're here for?" Elara shot back, her voice full of fire. "To defy logic, to overturn the predictable order of things." This was, of course, a thinly veiled metaphor for the political turmoil engulfing the city. My father, however, refused to engage. He saw the world through the lens of a gear train, and he believed the current chaos was simply a temporary misalignment, a minor disruption that would eventually sort itself out. I, on the other hand, was finding myself drawn deeper into Elara's world. While father obsessed over the pocket watch, I found myself engaged in conversations with her. Conversations that began with the intricacies of escapements and ended with the failings of the Habsburg monarchy. She was a student of philosophy, a clandestine journalist who wrote fiery tracts under a pseudonym. She spoke with a passion that was both alarming and intoxicating. The emperor's advisors are like the cogs in a grandfather clock. Anton, she said to me one afternoon, her voice a low murmur. We were sitting on a small bench outside the shop, watching the students march past, singing a protest song. They've been turning the same way for centuries, doing the same thing, completely unaware that the world has moved on. They are still keeping time for a world that no longer exists. I found myself nodding. A dangerous habit. But a clock can be wound again, I said, ever the pragmatist. It can be recalibrated. She laughed, a clear, sharp sound. And that is the fundamental flaw of your worldview. Anton, you believe the problem is with the clock itself. I believe the problem is with the people who built it, and the people who are still trying to tell time by it. We don't need a new clock, we need a new concept of time altogether. This was heady stuff for a man who spent his days with tweezers and tiny screws. Elara's words were like a small, persistent breeze, rustling the carefully arranged papers of my life. She was a disruptor, a force of nature, and she was making me see the world not as a perfect, predictable machine, but as a messy, beautiful, and utterly unpredictable human endeavor. The turning point came on March 13th. The day had started like any other, but by mid-morning, the air was thick with the scent of rebellion. The students had gathered outside the land house, the provincial assembly, demanding reform. The crowd grew, swelled by workers and ordinary citizens, until it was a great, heaving sea of humanity. The government, terrified, responded in the worst possible way. They sent in the troops. The sound of the first gunshot was a percussive, terrible thing, a crack that shattered the fragile calm of the city. I heard it from our shop, and for a moment, I thought it was just a dropped tool, a mistake. Then came another, and another. My father, who had been hunched over the watch, stood bolt upright, his face pale. What was that? He whispered. The revolution, Elara said, her voice quiet but firm. She had arrived just moments before, her eyes wide with a grin kind of excitement. The clock has officially run down. The streets erupted. The polite, intellectual protests turned into a riot. Barricades were erected with cobblestones and overturned carriages. The sound of shouting and gunfire became a terrible symphony. My father, in a moment of sheer, almost comical, panic, grabbed a small, ornate clock from the shelf and clutched it to his chest. They'll break everything, he cried. They'll destroy all the beautiful things. Elara rolled her eyes. They're trying to save the beautiful things, Leopold, just not the ones you're thinking of. I didn't know what to do. I was a man of quiet order, and the world had suddenly decided to descend into cacophony. I looked at Elara. Her face was a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She was a participant in this chaos, not a spectator. And then, I looked at the silent pocket watch on my father's bench. It was a symbol of all the old, static things. It was a relic of a time that was, quite literally, ending. We have to do something, I said. And to my own surprise, the words came out. We can't just stand here. There is nothing to be done, my father insisted, still clutching his clock. It is all madness, a temporary madness. But it wasn't temporary. It was a seismic shift. I looked at Elara, at her unwavering conviction, and then at my father, his hands trembling over his precious, delicate clock. I felt a chasm open up between us. A chasm of generational and political divides. He was a man of the old world, a world where things were made to be predictable and perfect. I was beginning to realize I was a man of the new world, a world that was messy, unpredictable, and terrifyingly alive. I made a decision. It was a small one, a simple choice, but it felt like a monumental one. I walked over to the workbench, picked up Elara's silent pocket watch, and slipped it into my pocket. I then turned to her. A sense of purpose I hadn't felt before coursing through me. Lead the way, I said, my voice steady. Tell me what we need to do. Elara's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise in their depths, followed by a brilliant, fierce smile. We need to tell the story, she said. We need to make sure their voices are heard. We need to write. And in that moment, as the sounds of revolution rattled the windows of our quiet shop, I realized that my craft as a clockmaker was not about making things run forever. It was about understanding that everything, even time itself, could come to a stop. And sometimes, It was up to us to start it all over again. The revolution had begun, and a most unlikely revolutionary had just found his calling. I was no longer an observer. I was now part of the ticking, chaotic mess of it all, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally on time.